be going on at. Okay. Yeah, you can.
Shall I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Hello, everyone. This is Amit, currently working as a mentor in Mentor Research. First of all, welcome to all of you. Today, we have with us Mr. Sidharth Manne, who was associated with Mentor Research since 2015. And yeah, he worked with us for a very long span of time. He is currently associated with Goldman Sachs. He is currently an associate in Goldman Sachs, associated with in it's placed in Bengaluru area. And just to give a brief description, I would pass on the mic to Mr. Siddharth so that he can give a brief introduction about himself, and then we can carry on.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. Thank you, Arun, for having me. Hello, guys. I'm Sidharth. I currently work at Goldman Sachs with the index analysis team. I've been working here for the past 2.5 years now. And so I graduated from BITS Pilani Hyderabad campus. I majored in electronics and communication engineering, and I also have a master's in physics. For those of you who know how the dual program works in BITS Pilani. After graduation, I actually interned with Goldman Sachs as part of my practice school, and then I got converted and became a full-time employee. Um yeah, since then I have been in the Bangalore area, and I've been working with the same team. I also was part of a director in ERI back in 2014, if I remember correctly. And then I went on to work with Arun in a product called as the Compendium, which we went on for 1.5 years. So yeah, that's about me.
Okay, great, Siddharth. First of all, it's nice to have you back. And the first question that I'd like to begin with is, can you please let me know what are your day-to-day activities in Goldman Sachs? I mean, what does your normal day encapsulate? What does it look like? So, I mean, can you describe your activities in the office?
Sure, sure. Basically, day in and day out, we deal with a lot of data when it comes to indices in the market. So on a daily basis, we receive queries, basically ad hoc queries directly from the portfolio management desk, be it the FI desk or the equity desk. We receive multiple queries on how they want to invest in a particular strategy, and to analyze that, they need many inputs from different kind of teams across the investment management division, and one of the team is index analysis team. So an index, just to put it out in layman terms, it's any standard in the market against which the performance of a portfolio is measured. So it's very important, or it serves as a starting point for any portfolio manager to kind of construct his or her portfolio, and then actively or passively manage as per the strategy. So to give that starting point to them, we come into the picture wherein we customize, we maintain, we perform the data quality checks of all the indices, and we price the securities, and we ensure that that data is given to the portfolio management team before they make any investment decisions. This is on a day-to-day basis. Of course, there are other aspects which come into picture with in terms of just analyzing the indices in general by liaising with various vendors across the market. And by vendors, I mean external parties like JP Morgan, MSCI, etc. And we get their research papers, we read those, we analyze those, and we give our analysis to the portfolio management desk. So this is what I could describe at a high level. And of course, there are other challenges on day-to-day activities with respect to the systems which we use, or the tools which we use in Coleman, which kind of forces us to kind of liaise with our technology partners to improvise them. And this is what we kind of categorize them into efficiency projects as such, which kind of consumes probably 1/4 of the day. And then I also happen to be a BI specialist in Goldman. So I primarily work with automation tools like robotic process automation. Then there are other data visualization and data management tools like Alteryx and Tableau. This basically involves collation of data across the floor to kind of analyze their process and workflow, and see if there is any scope of improvement or efficiency which could be introduced in their workflow by using Alteryx, Tableau, and RPA.
Okay. Great, Siddharth. You mentioned a few tools that you have been working with. You mentioned Tableau and some visualization tools. So, can you list a few more tools that you work with? I mean, you see, people like me. Being a business analyst, we deal with SQL queries day in and day out, plus Excel. Those are the two most important. Tools that we work with. I mean, anything apart from that is a bonus, and personally, I'm not that proficient in. So, what are the tools that are absolutely necessary for you? I mean, if I personally, if I'm interested to get into Goldman Sachs in a team where you work, so what are the tools that we must equip ourselves with, be it at an undergrad stage, or maybe a person like me who has a 2 year work ex? I mean, what are the basic skills which are absolutely necessary that I must have to get into a team like this in a company like Goldman Sachs or the JP Morgan?
Yeah, not only Goldman Sachs, if you want to crack into the financial services industry, the major tool or predominantly all the bankers across the world, they use MS Excel. Uh, for someone, I mean, in colleges or anywhere else, when you kind of start with MS Excel, you kind of find that tool to be very basic and has a minimum functionalities. But trust me, when you actually deep dive into or start exploring the functionalities of MS Excel, you will realize how powerful a tool it is. So 90% of our work is predominantly done in MS Excel sheets. Though we refrain ourselves from using some kind of macros or UDAs or VBA scripts, but yeah, definitely when you are kind of working in and day out on a monotonous task, you can definitely work on building those scripts. And this is something which requires minimal training because most of the support is kind of available online in Microsoft website itself. So Microsoft Excel is one of the most used tool, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's the most sophisticated one. Other BI tools which I personally work on is Alteryx and Tableau. So Alteryx is, I could say, a more sophisticated version of MS Excel. Not exactly an Excel, but it basically is a data analysis tool. If I have to just put in straight terms, we can use it can leverage databases. We can query using SQL. We can query using Python. It has multiple functionalities, and one best thing about Alteryx is it's just drag and drop functionality, wherein you have the tools ready made for you. You don't have to code in and out, but it has a better user interface than any other analysis tool which you see out there. There are certain aspects of that tool, for example, like predictive analysis, which is still unknown to us. But yes, that's one tool you can definitely think of start using in this data-driven world. So yeah,
Okay. So, so you favor this tool called, or can you please repeat the name of the tool that you were just mentioning? What was the name of that?
Alteryx,
Alteryx.
Alteryx.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Uh, so you also work on automation to some extent, do you?
Yes, yes.
Great. So what were the tools for automation?
So there's this tool called as Automation Anywhere. It's a software, and it's actually based on robotic process automation software out there, which again has drag and drop functionalities. But this is one tool which kind of mimics any human action which we perform on the desktop. So it can interact with any graphical user interface. It can, namely, all the your Microsoft Outlook or any other your Excel sheets, your PDFs, your websites, etc. Let's take a very small example of reading a PDF. For example, in financial services industries, you get a lot of memos, you get a lot of legal agreements which you need to process on a day-to-day basis. Something as simple as confirming a trade in the market legally when the broker sends you a legal template. All people do is they open the template, they look at the attributes, and they compare against what they have in their systems, and then they close the PDFs. So this task for a person to do on a daily basis across 500 docs, it's a huge manual task, and it's very inefficient. Per doc you might take some 10 minutes, but tools like Automation Anywhere allows you to kind of open the PDFs, read and extract the data from those PDFs, and compare it against what you have in your systems within seconds. So this is the kind of vision which everyone in the financial industries are looking at, to kind of process PDFs and get data from websites or Excel sheets, etc. Collate them, understand them, process them, compare it against whatever data which we have in our internal systems, and then give the output. So that's one of the very powerful tool which we use in Goldman right now, which is called as Automation Anywhere.
Okay. Siddharth, these are certain sophisticated tools, maybe not available to all of us. Again, coming back to my generic question, as in, if a person like me or any other individual tries to get into Goldman at any position, let's say if we are looking for an entry level job, what are the basic? I mean, do they look for a basic quantitative aptitude with generic questions of puzzles and Excel? So what are the skill sets, basic skill sets that a person must possess, and then he can take it on from there, because these tools are not available for maybe the viewers who are watching. So if they want to
Mhm.
equip themselves with those skills, what are those skills or the tools that they must absolutely know? Is it quantitative aptitude, puzzle? Is it Excel? Is it query? What is it?
Excel is a must in terms of just strictly speaking from tools perspective. Excel is a must, and probably it's your biggest ammunition which you can have while going to any interview for a financial services firm. Apart from that, of course, the competencies and skills could be more in terms of your knowledge about that industry. For example, if you're interviewing for a global investment research type of portfolio, then you definitely must be equipped. You must equip yourself in the equity research space, and not just equity research in general, but in within that also probably you might want to deep dive into certain sectors. For example, we see within Goldman, equity research is divided into certain sectors, wherein there are some 10 people who are specializing in telecommunication sectors, or some other 10 in energy, etc. So that's something probably when you are actually interviewing for these firms, you need to make up your mind which is the exact division or what is the kind of role you're looking for, and accordingly equip yourself with those kind of skills. For example, in my case, I am in the investment management division, so I should be more interested or more worried about me knowing about securities, about portfolio management, about data analysis. So these are certain aspects which investment management division will definitely cover. But yeah, at a high level, you definitely need to pick your sector and equip yourself with those technical skills.
Okay, great. Now I'll run by your journey. And when I actually was looking at your profile, I saw that you had an association with physics, and then you metamorphosed into a finance sector professional. So how did that metamorphosis take place? I mean the transition from physics to finance. What was your trigger point? How did you?
Uh, yeah, so this is pretty interesting actually. As you know, I majored in EC and I had a master's in physics. So the first year in BITS is a very generic year, as in any other engineering college, and then second year I had to do courses in physics. By the third year, I had to start enrolling myself in courses related to electronics and communication, and trust me, that was a trigger point. Usually, I guess it happens with any of your engineering folk as well. When they start doing their core courses, that's when they realize that they actually suck at it, and they may not. I'm sorry if I'm using a profane word, but so I remember the exact incident wherein there was an ex-director of equity research. His name is Ronak Singhal. He's my batchmate, and we gave an examination in electrical machines. Uh, Out of 60, I scored 8, he scored 5. And back then, when he was a director, he was kind of more inclined towards finance, and he started running the show in the college. And he was the one who kind of convinced me to, start enrolling myself in these kind of courses. And I actually did not have any other resource at my disposal. I started, I enrolled myself in ERI. Though in my first tenure, I did not take it that seriously. I just skimmed through the video lectures and I submitted my presentation. And that's when when I started reading more and more about equity research, I found it a lot more interesting. And in my second tenure, I was appointed as a mentor. During that time, I actually deep dived into this particular course completely. When I was a mentor, I was kind of going through the financial statements of one of my mentee. I think he was given Tata Power, and I started going to financial statements, and I myself was doing the fundamental analysis, the ratio analysis, the valuation, complete, and the complete stock pitch basically. And that triggered me to kind of pursue something in the financial services space. And as the next year came, I enrolled myself in certain finance courses. Then internship with Goldman happened, and I got converted. So that was my entire journey altogether. But yeah, it definitely kickstarted with more and more of reading stuff online on my own, ERI, etc., and certain courses in the college.
Great, Siddharth. I mean, see, all the while when we keep moving, there are certain decisions that we take that we might not agree with. As in, 2 years ago, I took a few decisions. I now, when I retrospectively think, I think I could have done it differently. So you were at ERI, and fortunately, you are fortunate enough to get into Goldman Sachs. Some of us lose our way and we do wayward stuff. So if you could talk to yourself 2 years ago, what would you tell yourself? Maybe what different thing could you have done? Could you have done it better? Or maybe for people like us, I mean, when we complete equity research initiative and we want to break into the world of finance, what are the steps that we can contemplate to do next?
Financial services as such, I mean, when you look at, so again, it's role specific. When you look at some coveted roles like in the space of private equity, etc., it's more unrealistic for people like us right after graduation, undergraduation, going ahead and applying for that roles, because that's more reserved for, I guess, people after MBA. But having said that, there are approximately some 60 or 70% of the roles out there as an analyst when you can join any financial services firm, which just require you to be equipped with basic knowledge of securities of the market and financial and functioning of financial market in general. This is exactly what I've heard from many people who are interviewing in Goldman and JP. All my other friends who have switched, some of my friends from in IIT who have switched from geophysics and have cracked interviews in JP Morgan, all have said the same thing. It's just having the basic knowledge of bonds, equities, basically all the financial instruments out there, and knowing the financial services market in general. Of course, when you want to get that initial kickstart into those firms, you need certain people to refer you, and that totally depends on your part of networking with different people across the globe. So that's up to, I mean, and obviously we have a lot of tools at our disposal. We have LinkedIn, wherein we can shoot mass emails and get such referrals out there. But yes, the basic knowledge is something which can definitely, and obviously if you have a relevant work experience, nothing like it. Relevant courses to back you up from college, nothing like it. And me being from an American bank, I can vouch for the fact that the mafia of CFA is definitely starting up in India. Initially, it was just most of the MBA grads from IIMs, but these days, if you see people who are clearing CFA level 1, 2, and 3, nothing like it. I mean, they definitely have a head start in, at least in American banks. That's Goldman definitely values such certifications in the market. Not only that, not only CFAs, but definitely you can look at other certifications which are out there in National Stock Exchange as well. So all these kind of different various plethora of resources available in the net, they can definitely help you kickstart the process out there.
Okay, and Siddharth, now that you mentioned CFA, CFA has three levels to it. I mean, now if you complete CFA level one, are you valued in the market, or is it that only when I complete one, two, and three, all three of them, only then I'll be valued in the market?
For entry level positions, you're definitely valued a lot more when you have CFA level 1. So it's not that you have to complete all the three levels out there, but level 1 is good for entry level positions. But as you grow in the industry, uh, people, I mean, it's it's just a certification at the end of the day. I mean, having a market knowledge would be more beneficial than just reading corporate finance via books. So that's a blatant fact out there, which even the portfolio managers say to us today. But it's always good when you start a journey. CFA is like a journey. Literally, you are investing 3 years of your life in kind of completing that certification. So for entry level, CFA level 1 is good. And as you progress and you kickstart your career in the financial services industries, you can take your own sweet time to kind of complete the other two levels as well.
Okay, so if I'm not wrong, just to summarize what you just said, I mean, as per you, some certifications might work. Certification in maybe quantitative finance, CFA, and knowledge about bonds, equities, and basic market instruments. They will come in handy when people try and apply for such big companies. And by big companies, I mean we all know the 2008 notorious Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs. These are certainly the big fishes in the entire world where people look up to those companies and they want to work there. So the point that we are trying to get across is it's not impossible as we people think. I mean, it's a testimony to the fact that you yourself being one of the mentors and directors in equity research, you have made it big into Goldman Sachs. and the skills that you personally vouch that people require are, I mean, they're not impossible to have. Some kind of preliminary skills and basic skills that we can all have, right?
Definitely, it's definitely not impossible. I mean, right, as I mentioned, there are plethora of resources out there where you can just help you kickstart the process. But keep in mind, when you have your basics right and when you have the right kind of network out there, you can definitely crack into these firms. It shouldn't be a problem.
Siddharth, network is very underrated. And when we look at network, we just looked at our LinkedIn connections. I have 500 plus LinkedIn connections. To be precise, maybe 380 around. And to be honest, I don't know who half of them are. It was it was like I just blindly shot. I saw their profile and I sent them a request. So I don't think that actually materializes. So what is the actual meaning of networking? And for professionals like you, what do you mean? I mean, how can people like us go for networking? What are the events that we can attend? And how can we make sure that this person gets into our network, we stay in touch, and maybe it will be beneficial for both of us. So how to actually network?
Okay, this is a very good question actually, and I personally have gone through the process, which you rightly mentioned in terms of LinkedIn, where you have more than 500 connections, and if I were to call it as a meaningful one, then probably I would just say some 50 or 60 out there.
Right.
With whom I have personally interacted and who know my work and who can vouch for my credibility out. But in the market as such, at least in investment management space, I would say there are a number of conferences which are happening. And actually, let me take back my words. Not just investment management space, in any industry, any sector where you go, there are a lot of conferences which happen across the globe. I've seen so many people actively participating in those conferences, be it in your city or somewhere in another country. This is where actual networking begins. When you attend these conferences, when you go and have those meaningful discussions about the future of the particular industry, that's when you have that meaningful connect. And for example, I went to an asset management conference here in Bangalore itself, where I could meet people from JP Morgan, BNP, Citi, uh, BlackRock. So these were the people. That's where I exactly connected with them and kind of figured out where exactly the future of asset management industry is going. These conferences are not even hard to attend. They are available right there in front of you. All you need to do is just make time for it, enroll yourself, book your tickets, and just go and attend the conferences. This is where you make some meaningful connections. Apart from that, you have your friends from college, you have your seniors from college. I personally gained and learned a lot from my mentor. He also happened to be a director of ERA at some point in time. His name is Navendu Sharma. So yeah, back then when I interacted with him, he gave me so much information about this particular industry, and he pushed me to kind of take up responsibilities even within mentored research, and kind of directed me when I graduated out of college and started my tenure in Goldman Sachs. So there are some meaningful connections which you make via conferences, via your clubs or forums or your college seniors. So these definitely play a role. And as you grow in the industry, in any company which you join, you have lot of options in terms of the groups, or for example in or communities, as I can say. For example, in Goldman Sachs you have LGBT community, you have India disability community, you have Indian cultural and regional communities, you have armed forces communities. So there are people from different background who kind of join these communities, and all you have to do is volunteer yourself in one of the events. You volunteer once and you get to know at least 10 people over there. You instantly make a connection over there and they remember you for life. So I would say real networking will begin when you kind of have some common topics to talk about, if I may say so. And that's how people will kind of connect with you and remember you, and they will refer you in future if need be.
Okay, great. It was nice to know. I mean, you did mention that you had one of your mentors. Literally, he did mentor you throughout your journey in ERI and after ERI. So this brings me to my next question, as in, how did ERI actually help you? If I were to ask you, was this a stepping stone? Was it significant in your life? If you look back at it, was it a good investment for you?
It was the best investment for me, if I were to say so, because it was a gateway. It was the opening of the financial world for me. I had no clue about the world of finance. For me, finance was all about some trader sitting out there in the exchange and just making those buy and sell calls. I mean, that's how we kind of any guy who just joins college and tries to think about the finance world, he can only picture a trader sitting in a stock exchange and doing that buy sell thing. In fact, I'll be honest. I even when I first heard about ERI and I heard that Arun was running it, I thought of Arun also as a trader doing that. That's how limited my knowledge was in terms of finance. I had no clue about corporate finance at all. ERA as such, I mean, I know it is very centric to equity research aspect, but as I mentioned before, it triggered me to kind of deep dive into it, read more and more articles about corporate finance, kind of figure out or lay my path to kind of see how I can crack into this particular industry. So it was definitely a trigger point. And though I'm not in equity research space right now, but having done ERI kind of opened my opportunities to enter into financial services industry.
Okay, nice to know that. Uh, Siddharth, one of the booming questions, I mean, more often than not, most of our mentees keep asking this, and I want you to share your views about that. What is the distinction between an MBA and an MS? When should a person go for an MS? See, I'll give you my example. As in, I currently have 2 years of work ex, and I don't know why, but I have this personal bias. If you have 3 4 years of work ex, why will you go for masters? Go for an MBA. But I know that MBA is a very big investment. I have one of my friends who is going to Rotman University. 75 lakh rupees is her investment. We don't know what the rewards will be, what will be the situation of the market. So, I mean, which one is better for which category of students? Who should pursue MS? Who should pursue MBA? So, how do we take this call?
That's a personal choice as per your interest. Just to broadly categorize these two aspects, I mean, MBA is. Let me start with masters first. So if you want to be technically sound in a particular field, then masters is definitely a cup of tea. I mean, someone who wants to do a masters in power electronics and he's looking for a future in that particular industry, then that's the way to go about it. For example, in my case, I am more interested in analytics space. So for me, a master's of science in business analytics would make a lot more sense than any other degree out there. In masters, you are grilled for 1 or 2 years only on the technical aspects of that particular field. You learn the technical aspects in and out, and you also are given industry projects to kind of back you up with that. When it comes to MBA, it's a broader degree. I mean, when you look at the curriculum itself, you learn a lot about corporate management, the strategy management, marketing management. Then these are your some of your core modules, and then you have elective modules based on your industry. For example, someone like me would like to more invest his time in the finance space. Someone who is interested in operations or logistics would go in that direction. Someone interested in entrepreneurship might work on some other exchange programs which kind of permit him to do such activities out there. So it's a much broader space. You do not learn the technical niche part of it. But yes, it solely depends on the candidate whether he's looking at a leadership or management kind of role to switch into in the later half of his life. Then that makes more sense to kind of do MBA. But if you're really clear about a technical aspect and you want to learn more on that space, then masters would make more sense.
Okay, so people who are fresh out of college, I don't think they have enough perspective to take this decision. As in, when I came out of college, I knew nothing about finance. I mean, I joined Mentor Research 1 year after passing out from my college. So, I mean, we keep on evolving, and we don't really know. I mean, uh, I might have spent 2 years in an NBFC, and I later realized that the best industry for me might be an FMCG. So, see, the clarity is anyway lacking. So, one of the trigger points for us to take this decision is the return on investment metric. I mean, the way we think of it is, if in a master's degree I'm spending around 30 to 40 lakh, and the kind of package that I get back in US, which is one of the most famous destinations for MS, when people pursue MS, they know that I'm spending 40 lakh. I mean, taking 40 45 lakh INR as loan, I might get reasonable amount of salary and I might pay it back in around 2 3 years when I'll break even. On the other hand, an MBA degree, we have to take twice the amount of loan and we don't know about the return on investment. Is that not one of the biggest things that have to be factored in? So how do we look at it this from a return on investment perspective? Should we even look at it, or should we just blindly go ahead and follow our passion that I should go for an MBA?
Um, I would strike a balance personally. I mean, that's definitely a good point with respect to the return on investment. But just a fact out there. If you look at the top 30 B schools out there in the world, 20 are from the United States and 10 are from other countries, approximately. And those 20 from the United States, which probably which you figure of maybe a crore or something. I'm not exactly sure the investment which you'll be putting out there. But when you see the placement records or the people who are graduating from those universities with an MBA degree, they all are super successful. And not in terms of just the money out there, but the kind of work they are doing. They are actually global leaders who are being shaped out there in the top 20 B schools. So it also depends on the kind of B school which you are enrolling yourself into. And definitely when it comes to MBA, one point which I would encourage everyone to think about is why an MBA? I mean, just because you want to increase that final annual figure in your salary statement, I would not recommend that. But it would make more sense when you're looking for a career switch or kind of grow into a more leadership role or start your own stuff out there, and you kind of need that particular degree or that kind of networking or that kind of exposure out there. Then it would make sense to go ahead and make that huge investment for yourself. So first step would be to think if it's really required for you. If the answer is yes, that's when probably you might want to look into what kind of B school you're getting into, and accordingly you can determine if your return on investment is making sense or not.
Siddharth, is it a myth that a person with 3 to 4 years of work ex should definitely go for an MBA and not for an MS? I mean, people say 3 years of experience I've already completed. Why should I go for an MS? MS is for fresh graduates, people who have just completed graduation. This is a myth in the market. And
Definitely.
is this, yeah.
Yeah, definitely not. As I mentioned, it's about the need. I mean, at the end of the day, it's what you are looking to do. For example, I know a person who is like extremely skilled in the data science space, and he would want to continue more on that space and probably at the end of the day work for big hotshots like Google, Facebook, who are like very much into the data science area. Now, a guy like him who is so much invested in that particular field, he would want to do masters and then subsequently get a PhD in data science and then enroll himself into these companies. Why would he look into doing an MBA? I mean, that's a genuine question which even he himself must have thought. So that's a point which I'm trying to bring out over here, that it's a need. Like if you really, it's your choice basically. At the end of the day, your career is shaping up until a particular point, and you feel that this is the time maybe I need to upskill myself in this particular field. Then it makes more sense to do masters, despite the tenure which have added. I mean, in your career. For example, if you're already 4 years into the business, doesn't mean that you don't have to do a masters. There are many people even with 10 years of work ex, they're joining big universities out there in the US and getting their masters from. It's all about the need and the expertise which you want to gain. As I mentioned, MBA is not something which will help you gain technical expertise in a particular field. It's not the degree for that part. For getting into those leadership roles or people management or strategy management, for those kind of roles, I guess MBA would make a lot more sense.
Okay. Siddharth, one of the questions that I did ask, and it kind of went into thin air because I had a lot of questions bundled up. I mean, that was another point that I needed to ask. We all fall into some kind of pitfalls. I mean, where we actually think back and think we could have utilized this time better. Maybe we could have done something better. I personally have a lot to tell if you ask me about my personal pitfalls. But I could recommend this is the space where I could have taken care of. I could have done something better. So for people, fresh graduates who are simply fresh out of ERIs, I mean, what are the common pitfalls which people face? I mean, for me, it was personally when I had to look at analytics, I thought analytics is the next big thing. Let's get into analytics. When I get into analytics, I think CFA. After CFA, why not an MBA? So there are so many lucrative options in front of me that at the end of the day, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. So I mean, when do we understand that this is a pitfall? How focused should we be? Or I mean, I mean, if I just equip myself with one skill, at the end of the day it will be redundant. Now when I equip myself with too many skills, I'll not be good at any. So what are the common pitfalls that you feel are prevalent throughout this industry, the industry you work in? Something which you would advise against for all the fresh graduates.
With respect to the point wherein you mentioned that you are equipped with one skill and then it becomes redundant after some point in time, uh, that's true at some level, but definitely when you are looking at entry level positions, you might really want to check. I wouldn't say your passion, but yeah, definitely something which you're good at and something you are interested in. If those two criteria are met, that's something which you can look into, uh, kind of developing those skills and competencies. And after certain point in time, definitely you need to upskill yourself. That skill might be redundant, I'm not quite sure. I mean, in this ever changing environment, definitely that might be redundant at some point in time, but right now if it is relevant, for example, the analytics point which you rightly mentioned, it might be relevant for another 6 7 years. After that, I don't know, will the market be as crazy about it? We don't know. So that point in time we might have to upskill ourselves. But the starting point which you're talking about for all undergrads who are coming out of college, that's something which you need to definitely pick. You need to pick one aspect which you're good in, which you're interested in, and just go for it. The later half of upskilling yourself or changing your stream, that probably you can only answer in time. I myself am not very sure if the skills and competencies which I have today, will those be relevant maybe sometime in 2030. So I really don't know that aspect. So that's something which probably comes organically as you grow in the industry. But right now at entry level, I would suggest stick to one particular field and just go for it.
Thank you, Siddharth. One more thing is, the finance professionals, they all know it in macroeconomics, the simple theory of short-term debt cycle and long-term debt cycle. I mean, these are the two words that we dread, because last time this long-term debt cycle actually manifested, it resulted in the 2008 recession. Now, for people like us who go for MBA abroad or maybe masters abroad, God forbid if there is another recession, and the pool of talent is always there, but the pool of hiring people, they dry up, this investment has certainly gone bad. It will become a non-performing asset because the placements will dry up. So do we have to prepare for such kind of eventuality where we know, earlier, of course, it is like the stock, it is like the returns. I mean, a particular share gave me 60-70% returns in great time, but when the recession happened, it came down around 70-80%. Same thing can happen with us. The past trend of the placements may be very high, but when the recession comes, we don't know. Neither one of us can time the market. But if recession happens the very year we are passing out of the particular college, how do we guard against that? Because we have already made that 40 lakh, 50 lakh rupee investment. And if I don't get a job, this is where I'm in trouble. So how do we actually, face that kind of a situation?
That's a very tricky question. But just to, in terms of recession or the market going down, I mean, I probably can relate to it to some extent, given the fact that even right now, with the advent of the big data revolution, people are saying, not people are saying, in general, if you just go to any trade analyst call, you would realize that most of the traders out there, or most of the portfolio managers out there, have a sentiment that financial services industry as such is declining. That's because of the fact that most of the trading decisions right now are also algorithmic based. I mean, there is very less, I wouldn't say very less, but definitely the aspect of human judgment is declining. And that's the reason why companies are adapting themselves to kind of release new platforms which center around big data. And one classic example which I can think of within Goldman Sachs is the launch of consumer loans in digital platform, which is called as Marcus. So that's a new platform which Goldman released in 2016. And that was the time, I remember exactly, 2016 quarter 1, when Goldman Sachs had a very bad quarter earnings. And if you look at the financial statements, you might even see that since 2008, that was the worst year for Goldman Sachs. But when Marcus released, basically what I'm trying to say is, when they adapted to a new technologies, right now if you look into Marcus, it has a deposit of $35 billion, and that's huge amount within 2 years. No other company ever has got consumer loan of $35 billion in 2 years from a digital platform, and that too, this has only been the case from the United States of America. It has not even expanded to Europe and Australia, where it is planned to expand right now. So what I'm trying to say is, whenever these kind of dips in the market come into picture, companies release new strategies or release new products into the market, which kind of create new scenarios, new job scenarios, new investment strategies out there for other people like us to kind of invest into, or look at the big picture. Definitely, if you're looking at say for example, next year there is a prediction of or even at the onset of this year, there was a prediction of a financial crisis. Touch wood, nothing has happened right now. But if in case that's a case, that happens, the only thing which we can do from our point of view is just wait for the big hot shots to kind of foray into new platforms and technologies, and see if new market spaces are created. That happens every single time, because as the company declines, they really want to see what new strategies they can deploy to kind of thrive into the market, and that has a butterfly effect, rolling all the way down to people like you and me.
Okay. That was really insightful because uh, I mean this is one of the eventuality that we have to prepare about, and as per you, we cannot really prepare for that. Yeah, but we can actually look for the new fields that are being created and foray into that particular sector, because as the because the sun will rise again, and new fields will be created, new skills will be required, and we have to equip ourselves with that particular skill when the entire dust settles. So at the end of the day, we have to keep upskilling ourselves to stay relevant in the market. So
Yes, I would say that would be advice out there as well. Even this was one of the main theme points in one of the town halls in Goldman Sachs as well, wherein they stressed on the fact that with the onset of data revolution and artificial intelligence and machine learning coming into picture, people are more worried about jobs getting automated, and people getting redundant in near future. But that's the point which they tried to say or bring out over there, that when jobs are being taken over by machines, as such, new jobs will be created. It's
correct,
not that there wouldn't be a proper balance out there. So that's a theme which kind of is being spread across the world, in terms of big companies investing into new areas which will kind of give opportunities to people to work in those spaces.
so Siddharth, a person like me, I'm genuinely interested in finance. I mean, we have been reading about Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing. I mean, we are genuinely interested in finance. And once we hear news about artificial intelligence taking on the market, we are certainly afraid whether we have made the right choice or not. Now, people like us will try and foray into artificial intelligence. Maybe we can, maybe we cannot. But at the end of the day, that is not what we wanted to do. The market demand has made us do that. So that may not be an ideal situation for us, but it has to be an ideal mix of, according to you, it has to be an ideal mix of what you want to do and what the market wants you to do. So it has to be an ideal mix of both.
The market wants you to is basically the opportunities which are out there. I mean, in those, at the end of the day, whenever you're looking for the job which you want to do, you definitely are looking at your interests, and at the same time, if you're good at it, and of course at the same time, if that opportunity is available out there, until it's available, you'll definitely hunt for that dream job of yours, and basically you pursue for that. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, definitely you can look at the sense that, if you're interested in it and if the opportunity is available, then those are the two combos which will definitely help you to land your job. Yeah.
Great. Siddharth, now that we had a discussion about the MBA, we have had a diverse set of discussion. One final question regarding Goldman Sachs. I mean, when people get into an interview, we typically have 3 to 4 rounds of interview, where we have first is a written examination we have to take on, then we have to take some technical rounds. Finally, there is an HR round. Is this the same thing in for an analyst or an associate position in Goldman Sachs as well?
No, Goldman has a lot more interview rounds. I mean, typically I've heard the people who are joining even in Bangalore and in New York, they typically go through 14 or 15 rounds, and these rounds basically. So it reflects from the fact that, for example, someone who wants to join the index analysis team of Goldman Sachs, they have to be interviewed by all 10 people in my team. So the questions vary differently. It's not just with respect to the technical aspects or the technical knowledge which the guy has. Uh, it's also about if he can fit into the culture of Goldman Sachs. And the way to assess that particular aspect is to allow as many people as possible to interview the particular candidate to see if he's a fit in the Goldman Sachs culture. And this is even more true when you go up the ladder. Basically, if someone at the position of managing director is kind of interviewing for that position in Goldman, he has to go through probably 30 or 40 rounds. There will be multiple teams, there will be multiple managing directors, there will be partners who kind of interview that particular person. So the interview process, at least in Goldman, is not as straightforward as I saw in other companies. Here, it's a mix of your technical knowledge, your communication skills, and if you will be a fit in the culture of Goldman Sachs or not. An assessment of that, yeah.
I'm afraid there is no way to prepare for that because I mean, like I said, we can prepare for MS Excels, but the way we can fit into a culture or not, that is something much beyond our control. So if people like us want to get into Goldman Sachs, we need to equip ourselves with the technical skills, have to take care of the communication skills, and we should also have a reasonable grip on the human skills that we have. These are the three basic qualities that people are looking for.
Definitely. And in the last aspect, I would even so the way certain interviews work, I'm not sure if some of us over here might have sat in for interviews of Futures First. It's a trading company based out of Malaysia. So they have something called as a stress interview. They are known for that, and they create scenarios wherein there will be some four or five people sitting on the table, and two will play the good cop and three will play the bad cop. So even these kind of interviews kind of show what kind of will you be able to sustain that particular culture or not. So out there again, I would say, I mean, just to answer in terms of how do we prepare for that, I'm not exactly sure on how do you deal with those scenarios. I guess that's more on the fact on how you were exposed to up until your undergraduate studies. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of case studies, which you could go through, or a lot of glassdoor interviews which you can go through, which will act like sample interviews, which can help you to crack those kind of interviews. But when I say assessment of the culture, I basically mean how well you can handle the pressure, how well you believe in the concept of collaboration, teamwork, your leadership skills, your intercommunication skills, etc.
Okay. Great. Siddharth, now that we have heard about your perspectives on the job market, the MBA, what are your plans for the future? What are you planning to do next?
For me, it's definitely delving into the big data revolution. I mean, I started with my hands-on experience on corporate finance, but then most of my job is data-centric, and I also happen to a business intelligence specialist. So that's when I thought probably the next logical step for me would be to kind of see if I can uh, see how big data can play a role in investing strategies, which has already started in the market. For example, there's something called as a very interesting concept in Goldman called as quantonomics. This is something wherein, for example, if someone is sitting for an interview, there are certain factors you would look into to qualify that person to give that job, namely his technical skills or his communication skills, etc. So these are certain factors. In a similar scenario, you can start talking about equities. For any equity to qualify into a particular portfolio, you might start looking into certain factors. Say factor one being its value in the market, or factor number two its momentum in the market, its profitability, etc. So these all factors again are data driven. People read financial statements, people attend analyst calls, people read reports from various vendors. There's huge set of information from the website in terms of if any Uh, if you want to check the profitability of any company on the website, you can track its e-share market value. That's basically the number of hits which will happen on the trafficking of that particular company. So there are so many parameters in terms of which can be quantified in terms of data, which will help you make those investment decisions. And apart from that, there is also something called as analyzing the tone, the text of a particular investment out there. Uh, a very simple example I could give is with natural language processing, which is a very important element of machine learning, wherein it kind of processes, understands the text and the tone, the sentiment of a particular stock in the market, and accordingly helps the portfolio managers make those decisions. So this is an area which interests me a lot, wherein we can leverage data to make the most efficient, quantitative-based investment decisions in the market. And this is exactly what I'm looking at. Not quite sure how I go about it. I definitely have a lot of resources, a plethora of resources available within Goldman Sachs, which kind of, as I mentioned, that I'm already into a data-centric role. So I'm trying to leverage that and see if I could make my way into more role which is suitable for like a quantitative investment strategies, something on those lines.
Okay, Siddharth, when I looked at your profile, and if I had to venture a guess, I would have said that a person like you will get into MBA in finance, maybe pursue something like a CFA, and then go for an MBA in finance. So, certainly you have considered MBA in finance, so you have decided against that. Can you give me a reason if hypothetically you were to go for an MBA in finance, or hypothetically MS abroad? You are more inclined towards an MS abroad if you were to go there. So why not an MBA in finance in future?
To be honest, I never felt the need to so far. So, I mean, that would be my most blunt and classic answer in terms of the exposure which I got in Goldman Sachs. Uh, if you look at any let's just say someone at my level, someone at my level who has joined in Goldman Sachs and who has already worked for 2.5, 3 years. Uh, when you look at his or her career graph, you see that the career aspect in Goldman Sachs is so meticulously handled by not even your own manager, but even by the managing director of that particular division. It is so meticulously handled that you rarely feel the need of an MBA. As I mentioned, if you're looking for a role switch or you want to basically enhance your particular profile into a more leadership role, which you cannot achieve by actually investing your time in that particular company, that's when people usually look for MBA. But in Goldman, especially strictly speaking from Goldman perspective, I've really seen that particular scenario. I myself never felt the need that at this point in time I need to deep dive into an MBA degree. And that's probably not only of the fact that my career is meticulously handled by my managers over here, but also of the fact that I'm more invested to kind of increase my technical base in the data science aspect, which I believe cannot be met by any B school who is giving a solid MBA degree.
Fair enough. So, if people want to go for MBA or MS abroad, one of the most important concepts is scholarship. So, would you like to provide us any views regarding scholarship? I mean, every university will provide you $2,000, $3,000 scholarship, but that is not it. That they provide generic scholarships to everyone. So, if I want to make myself a scholarship-worthy candidate, how do you propose we do that?
So there is already a need-based scholarship in every university in the United States, at least for MBA. That's what I've seen. But you need to be in that particular eligibility criteria to avail that scholarship. Apart from that, it's no secret that it's still a mystery on what basis do universities give that particular scholarship. The $2,000, $3,000, probably that's a generic scholarship which is given to everyone. That I wouldn't even qualify it as a scholarship. But then
Correct.
there are students who have secured a 60% or 70% full tuition waiver, which is an amazing scholarship out there. And whenever I try to evaluate their profile or try to dig into factors as to why the university chose that person to give that 70% scholarship, the answer is always bizarre. I mean, you rarely find a very strong reason to believe that this person deserves a 70% scholarship. It's like any other profile out there. I mean, there are some thousands and thousands of applications which are going, and the guy who got 70% scholarship is almost has the same profile as any other guy which I can think of. So that's still a mystery even right now when you try to find that answer in Google or in the student forums out there. You still do not have a clear cut answer, but majority of the people out there still believe that if you have a very good GMAT score, that definitely helps you to consider for the university to consider you as a guy who can avail a good scholarship. That's again a myth out there in the industry. Nobody knows how exactly it functions. But yeah, it's advisable to have a very strong GMAT score, not only in terms of speaking from scholarship perspective, but definitely if you want to crack into those top 20 B schools, it's a must that you have a very good GMAT score.
I want to add my 2 cents into it because I myself have a GMAT score of 710 and I'll be appearing GMAT again. I'm targeting a score of around 750. Hopefully, I might do it, I might not, but I'm targeting somewhere above 730, 740. The reason being, one of my friends, she got an admit into a university and she got 100% tuition fee waiver. When I asked her, and she's doing an MBA. So I precisely don't remember which particular scholarship did she qualify for, but one of the eligibility criteria was 5 year work experience and a GMAT score which is good, and she secured 750 on the GMAT. So that gave her a
Mhm.
100% fee waiver, tuition fee waiver. So again, as far as what you said, I believe GMAT score happens to be one of the most important criteria that people evaluate while giving the scholarships, and work experience might also come in handy. This is again one of the things that I think, because volunteering experiences, rest of the other things, everyone has it in common because we all can fake volunteering experience. I've seen people do that. So I believe GMAT score is perhaps one of the most important factors that is being looked into to actually give scholarship to candidates. One more thing, I mean, top 20 B schools, and one of the reasons why my friend chose that particular school, which not everyone is aware of, is because she felt that top 20 schools will never offer you scholarships. Why do they need to give you scholarships? I mean, you are looking for that college, they are not looking for you. So one of the reasons was, she said, I might not pursue an MBA from a college which is not in the top 20. I'll pursue an MBA from a college which is in the top 100, outside top 50, so they will give me scholarships. So is that a right frame of mind? Is this one of the ways we can think? It's because it's into the top 100. In India, there are only 2 to 3 colleges which make it to top 100. And looking from that perspective, even that is a great choice. Although I'm not getting into an Ivy League, but again, I'm making lesser investment, which makes it less risky. Do you advise that kind of a strategy for people who of course do not have a lot of money to pump into B schools?
Again, that's subjective. That's completely subjective. When you choose a B school, you might want to keep a certain criteria in mind, which will attract you to that particular B school. For example, for me, diversity is a major factor. I wouldn't say I would not, but I would prefer a school which has more diversity. People coming from different countries to study in that particular. I mean, that particular course itself, not the university in general, but that particular course. I would more prefer to kind of invest my money into that particular school. And also there are other factors which come into picture in terms of the quality of the faculty out there, its ranking across the globe, the kind of exchange program it offers. So these are certain factors definitely you would want to consider whenever you want to invest into a B school. I personally would not suggest to look beyond top 50 just because someone is giving you more scholarship. I mean, definitely, if a school which is ranked 55 out there in the globe and it has all the features which you are looking for in terms of the education, nothing like it. I would endorse that. But having said that, you rarely find a school which is not ranked so well, but kind of gets ticked in your checklist item in terms of the features it has to offer. Usually, the B schools which kind of have all these required features or the features which people are demanding, they usually fall in the top 20 or top 30. And not quite sure about the information regarding the scholarship which you just mentioned, that B schools outside top 50, they're willing to give you more. I personally heard the other way around. In fact, the B schools in top 20, they usually are quite expensive, and to endorse people coming into their universities, they usually give pretty decent scholarships. I personally know one of my friend, and I can talk about him, who joined Keenan Flieger, which is in 19th or 20th position in the world. He got a 100% scholarship into that particular university last year. So there are many universities, and I also know someone who has gone to Cornell University, um Johnson School of Business, if I'm not wrong, and also someone in University of Michigan, which is Ross School of Business. They offer generous scholarships out there to. That's one of the incentives which attracts these bright students to kind of invest their money into these schools. So I actually heard the other way around, that the top 20, top 30 generally are more willing to give you the scholarship, and they also have all the universities have the need based scholarship.
Okay, so this is a conflicting opinion because what I have heard from my sources, they said that they preferred schools outside top 20. So I guess we'll never know. But I mean, it looks a bit counterintuitive because top schools, they are not looking for students. I think students are looking for top schools. I mean, them giving scholarship is one of the best things that I've heard. So at least it's encouraging for one and all. For those who are watching the webinar right now, at least you can target the top B schools, and you can, and at least not think about the school from a financial perspective. They are willing to give you generous scholarships if you are eligible according to them. So that's indeed a very optimistic point of view. I'm very happy after listening to it. Uh, Siddharth, now that we have covered, I think almost every single thing that we had to. One generic question which you ask every single person is: any final tip for those who are watching you right now live? What do you want to say? Anything. The entire stage is yours. What would you like to tell them? Any final tip? Anything that comes to your mind?
I would say just stay flexible. That's one thing which has helped me personally in my life. Just stay flexible in terms of choosing your options, in terms of choosing your career paths, in terms of basically making any kind of decisions. Don't be rigid. Do your research. Put your head down. Get all the facts right. Once you have everything, that's when you actually kind of make a rigid decision. Until then, just be flexible. Be open to ideas. Trust me, the world is changing a lot more fast than it did like 10 years back. Probably right now, when you think about data revolution and these kind of topics which come into the picture, it's just been 2 years wherein all this terabytes of data has been collected. It's not been like since 10 years. It just started. And in the next 4 years, probably this field might not even stay relevant. So the point being, any aspect, not in terms of life, but in terms of your career, it's an ever-changing environment. So all you need to do is be flexible and keep upskilling yourself so that you stay relevant in the market.
Okay, those are indeed some words of wisdom, and I think we have addressed most of the aspects that mentees wanted us to address, because we did take in a few questions that they wanted me to ask. I hope I have done justice to them. I could not see any more questions on the right side of my tab, so I think that's about it. And Siddharth, I must tell you this: I have had the an honor to actually talk to a lot of them, and I must tell you, every single time I talk to guys like you, and especially talking to you, I did widen my perspectives. I got to know a lot of new things, and you are very generous, very generous. I mean, people like you who work in Goldman Sachs still find time for people like us who are upcoming mentees and mentors to talk to us, to share your views. It is like you are giving it back what you got from mentor research. And I hope I could do the same maybe 2 3 years down the line when I have to talk to my mentors and mentees. I'll tell you, it was a privilege talking to you. I really got to know a lot of new stuff. I bombarded you with questions and you gave me equally wise answers. And it was great talking to you, Siddharth.
Thank you so much, Amit. Likewise here. I mean, it is my pleasure to kind of be a part of this session over here. So yeah, anything for mental research and anything for Arun. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth. We'll stay in touch. Thank you, Siddharth. Thanks a lot.